You know the story of the community, and they asked, how much does this tablet cost with all this writing on it? And God said to the Israelites, it's free. They said, well, if that's the case, we'll take 2. I mention that because this is the rare Shabbat, not so rare, in which we have not 1, but 2 parshiot, 2 different readings from the Torah. There are 54 parshiot, and you might, of course, note that that's more than the weeks of the year. But that's because if there is a holiday, like Passover coming up, and one of those days, as there will certainly be, is on a Shabbat, rather than reading the continuity of the Torah readings, you read in honor of the holiday, so that there are more parshiot than weeks, but more than that. There are 7 times in the course of a year in which parshas may be combined. That enables on a leap year there to be enough Shabbatot for when it's not a holiday for each week a different reading. So that's a little overview about numbers and parshiot. Numbers are important to this week's Torah reading. Vayakel means, and they gathered. Pekudei means, and there was an accounting. Earlier in our Torah readings, we've read about God's command to build a mishkan, a tabernacle. In Vayakel, the gathering of all the materials are presented, and then in Pekudei, Moses reviews what was contributed. And the explanation of the rabbis is that even Moses, the great leader, what made him great was humility. What made him great was accountability. To say, this is the details of what you brought. Let me tell you that I lived up to being scrupulous and how I administered my duties. I have a beloved teacher and friend, Peter Pitzeli. He's the father of bibliodrama. And I was talking to him about a month ago. He's not only a remarkable poet, former professor of literature, a former psychodramatist, but the father of what's called bibliodrama, entering into the text and seeing yourself in the text. And he was telling me, we were talking about a month ago about fundraising, and he said, I was once in a synagogue, and it happened to be that it was the Torah reading that dealt with the contributions, and with a unique moment. The moment, he said, that I would imagine that of all the moments in Moses' life on his epitaph, he would have chosen perhaps this moment to represent one of the greatest achievements of his life, one of the greatest joys of his life. For there is one verse in the Torah reading that indeed is in Hebrew bolet. It sticks out, namely, a verse that says that Moses had to say to the Israelites regarding the nidivot, the free-willed offerings, he had to say to the Israelites, stop. There is more than enough for what's required to build this tabernacle. All the needs were met. Stop bringing. It's the first recorded fundraising effort that I'm aware of in any religious literature, in which the people are asked, give of yourselves. Allow this moment to be a moment in which the construction itself will be free-willed. When the tabernacle is built, there will be annual, if you will, taxes for its maintenance. But in the construction, it's free-willed. And such is the moment of expressing a desire to honor God, to honor belonging to community, that Moses will say, stop. And Peter Pitzeli said, if I was Moses, that quality of love displayed by the people would represent my moment of aspiration, my moment of joy, my moment even of achievement. And so I pause to acknowledge that moment. That's part of Vayakhel, the first of the two Parshiot, the first of the two books that we read from tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll talk about Pekudei. But a segue. I had the privilege, before services tonight, to look over the booklet that congregants will receive on Sunday, which is the book of testimonials for our immediate past president, Mark Golden. And as I look through the pages, you can see it's quite substantial. The words of gratitude to Mark, which are so well deserved, moved me. But more, I know that each of these ads costs money, and that it's a thick book, all the more in this time where physically we have been separated. Reminded me of the gift of Congregation B'nai Israel to me and to so many that are members of this community. And more, I looked at the back of the book. I pause to note that on the back are the names of families who have linked their estate, their will, with a legacy gift. There are fully 76 families who at this point in Congregation B'nai Israel have made a pledge through the Community Foundation of Orange County to make a legacy gift to the synagogue. I pause to acknowledge Wendy Aronson, a congregant who's the executive director of our thriving community foundation. Well, this book, this event, which took so much effort by volunteers. On Sunday night, members of our community will be getting a dinner delivered and a cocktail to their homes, because normally this event would be in person and we would be gathered in this extended synagogue space. My wife and I look forward to the cocktail and the dinner and more, to being able to feel the pride of belonging of a community of volunteers whose hearts are open. Nadav libo, it says in the request to bring offerings. And there's a word used in that request. In that first description, the parsha was called truma, an offering. And the rabbis say that the same root as offering is elevation, lehirim, to raise up. That when we open our hearts and give of ourselves, whether with our financial contributions, with our volunteer efforts, we link ourselves across generation to our ancestors in the desert who had to be told, enough. We're not there to say enough. I don't know if there have been many enoughs ever after in fundraising. But in creating community, there is indeed always more to give. Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, on this, the Shabbat of Vayakhel Pekudei, we celebrate the gift of community, constituted by members who give of themselves in time, in voice, in dollars, in reaching out in embrace. May we celebrate, knowing that this too is a moment of achievement and joy. Amen.
Amen.
So in my little teaching, I mentioned that Peter Pitzeli is the father of bibliodrama, which again is the invitation to enter into a story of the Bible and see yourself there. Here's what he did with this Vayakel. He said to the people, see yourself as one of those Israelites in the desert. And Moses has asked you to bring offerings to help build the tabernacle. What's the object that you've chosen to bring? And what does the object and the giving it over to God's sanctuary mean to you? And so as we get ready now for our reflection, our Amidah, perhaps allow yourself to go to that place. See yourself in the midst of this time for reflection as one of the Israelites, Moses having invited you to make a contribution as your heart calls on you to do. What is it you would bring and why? Our private prayer and our time for reflection, 47 to 52.